In 1894, just 80 years ago, only 2 out of every 100 15-year-olds went to school. Most other children, if they went at all, had left school by the age of 12. Today, every child has the right to 11 years free state education. It was a long, hard struggle to win that right, but has it been worth it? Should our schools be better? Over the next few weeks, we'll be finding out what's happening inside our state schools, to standards, to teaching methods, to teachers, and to the pupils themselves. But we start our series by asking a fundamental question. Just what is school for?
Theoretically, it's to get your qualifications, I suppose. Or that's what a lot of people think. But I think it ought to prepare you for outside school.
I think that if we didn't know anything about education, we wouldn't know anything about the jobs that we were going to do or what we would like to do when we were older. We wouldn't know how to bring up our children or anything.
You get bored if you stayed at home all the time.
Just to learn things for when we're a bit older, to get jobs.
There's a lot of things you can do at school that you'd never be able to do outside. For instance, swimming, there's a lot of things like that, a lot of sport you can do.
My own opinion is to get qualifications to move on to, say, a new job.
School really is a basis of education. It forms a foundation for your thinking, for your thoughts.
The industry is getting a bit het up that they're not providing, schools aren't providing school leavers of a good enough standard for their requirements. I don't think that is the basic function of school. I think really that should be left to the industries themselves. The schools just provide the basic material for industry, and industry really should work from that.
The balance was wrong in the past. We have a responsibility now in this generation to see that we don't get it wrong in the other direction. There's no virtue in producing socially well-adjusted members of society who are unemployed because they don't have the skills, nor at the other extreme must they be technically efficient robots. Both of the basic purposes of education require the same essential tools.
In a speech back in October last year, Prime Minister Jim Callaghan launched the great debate on education. One of his main aims was to improve the relationship between school and work. And one of the main reasons for his speech was that some industrialists were complaining about the falling standards of school leavers. The General Electric Company is one of Britain's largest manufacturing corporations, making everything from domestic goods to aircraft parts. The managing director is Sir Arnold Weinstock.
Last year, the GEC took in, I think, 1,200 graduates, and I have the impression that they are of high quality. But we were not able to fill the vacancies in the offices and factories for school leavers, not because we didn't have enough applicants, but because we didn't have enough applicants who could read and write and count. And I think that is not a satisfactory state of affairs.
Sir Arnold Weinstock echoing the complaint of many industrialists. But it's not the first time that the schooling provided for our children has come under attack.
Lad clerks have to undergo an entrance examination in arithmetic, dictation and spelling. In late years, there has been a deterioration in the results of this examination. 65% of the candidates having failed on a recent occasion.
So spoke a manager of the Great Western Railway in 1917.
Education should not be extended past the age of 14. It would impose a real burden on British industry, which they would be quite unable to bear.
Thus, the Federation of British Industry objected to an Education Act in 1918, which had hoped to make it compulsory for working children between the ages of 14 and 18 to have 8 hours of schooling a week.
Now, take up your pen, write the date.
Education should be seen as the ally and not the dreaded competitor of employment. To the question of who will do the work if everyone is educated, we reply that education itself will oil the wheels of industry and will bring a new efficiency.
Well, Jim?
Those were the words of Rab Butler as he introduced the 1944 Education Act, which established secondary education for all children. And industry did not deny this expansion of the state education system, as Britain strove to create a new society after the Second World War. In the 50s and 60s, more schools were built, more teachers were trained, and more polytechnics and universities were established. By 1972, the school leaving age had finally been raised to 16. Today, more than 9 million children are being educated in state schools, and 1 in 5 school leavers go directly into some form of higher education. But have Rab Butler's words of 30 years ago come true? Has education become the ally and not the dreaded competitor of employment?
Quite honestly, the education system, in my opinion, suffers from what I would call a perpetuating of the academic. And what I mean by this is that invariably a person will go to school till he's 18, he will obtain A-levels, he is encouraged to go to university, where he passes a degree in something or other. He then goes on perhaps to do a year's teacher's training. He then goes on into school to teach. And the end result, of course, is that you get a perpetuation of that, because people are guided into choosing careers in banking, in going to university particularly. Grammar schools are particularly bad, or have been bad, in that sense. And I doubt if there's one pupil gone from the local grammar school into industry. Let me put it that way.
Bill Nichols is the Employee Development Officer at Chubb & Son, the lock and safe manufacturers at Wolverhampton. It's his job to select school leavers for employment into his company. Bill Nichols is not alone among industrialists in feeling that modern education is failing industry by not teaching the right attitudes and skills in the schools. So just what is being taught in schools today? Codsall High School is a comprehensive with 1,200 pupils. It's in Staffordshire, only a few miles away from Bill Nichols' factory in Wolverhampton. And at Codsall High School, all pupils follow a programme of general education for their first few years. But when they get to their 4th year, they can choose which subjects they wish to study within the limits of a common core curriculum.
Over the last few weeks, we've done quite a lot of work on equation solving and set theory. What I'm going to do this
However, all pupils still have to take lessons in maths, English and physical education.
If we just take x plus 2 equals 5, obviously the solution for that is x equals 3. I'm going to come and look now and see if you can complete the second part of this.
Besides maths, English and PE, each pupil also has to take 2 science subjects, though the less academic child can opt out of one of these by taking a home management course.
Yeah, that's right. Put it about 6 inches off the ground.
A social science like history or sociology is also compulsory in the 4th and 5th years, as is a foreign language.
I'm going to give you the directions in French, and I want you to tell me where I've directed you to using your maps. We're going to start from corner 1, au coin de l'avenue Foch et la rue du Bac.
But again, pupils can opt out of studying a language by taking European Studies or the home management course.
Et c'est à droite, à côté de la rue Rivoli et la rue Gambetta. Julian?
L'école.
Oui, c'est ça. The next one then, still starting from the same place.
Finally, in their 4th and 5th years, each pupil has to do a practical subject like metalwork or needlework. Other options such as typing or music or an extra language are on offer.
Stephen?
La église.
Non, ce n'est pas l'église. La deuxième à droite. Try another one. Prenez la troisième à droite. La troisième à droite. Et c'est à gauche.
The pharmacy.
Non, vous avez tourné à gauche. Il faut tourner à gauche.
With its compulsory lessons in English and maths and its range of options, the curriculum at Codsall High School is similar to many other comprehensives. But every school in England and Wales is free to choose the subjects it teaches, the only compulsory subject being religious instruction. Every school is free to choose the methods used to teach those subjects, and every school is free to choose the content of each subject. An English lesson could mean the study of a novel in one class and creative writing in another. So just how do teachers decide what to teach?
The structure of the curriculum sets out to be perfectly positive in catering for the needs of children, whatever their ability level might be, and whatever their future needs might be. We have to be conscious that there will be a proportion who will go on to universities. There will be a proportion who get involved with the retail trades, a number who move into industry. Now we've got to provide for their needs as well as their interests, and it is important that they are properly prepared while in school in order to be able to take the next step.
Geoffrey Bate is the headmaster of Codsall High School. His deputies are Paul Abbs and Terry Brown.
There are so many subjects. They grow by the minute almost in the polytechnics and the universities, and there's a case for all of them being on the school curriculum. But I think what is wrong with any comprehensive schools today, they try to offer too much. The curriculum is overcrowded.
As teachers, we are faced with such a wide variety of exams and such different possibilities for examining children, with all the related topics of whether one should be in mixed ability classes right through or not, that I think it is time almost for teachers to be yelling help. And there needs to be some real, rationalisation of the exam setup.
Every year, more and more pupils take more and more exams when they leave school. 80% of school leavers now have some form of qualification. Mind you, that qualification could be anything from Mode 3 CSE set by the school to a GCE O-level set by one of the numerous examining boards. GCE O and A levels are both qualifications required by universities, so the exams tend to be academic. But with the huge expansion of comprehensive education in the late 50s and 60s, and the continual demand by parents, pupils and employers for some form of leaving qualification, it was felt that the GCE, by having such an academic standard, was not meeting the needs and abilities of most children. So a new exam was devised, the CSE. This new exam was intended for the less able child, and some forms of it give schools more flexibility in setting and marking their own exams. So now in secondary schools, there are two major exams running side by side, with 31% of pupils attempting at least one GCE O-level, while 41% attempt at least one CSE exam. And it's the questions asked in these exams which determine what is taught in our schools. Why? Because pupils usually have to start working for them at the age of 13.
Examinations have grown to such an extent that they distort the educational process. And what we've got to do is to have alternative means of assessment, and these alternative means of assessment have got to be agreed to, of course, by parents, by teachers and by outside bodies. There are problems, and these problems have got to be overcome. Too much time, too many resources at the moment are spent on the educational system assessing and examining at 16. There must be some alternative method. Unfortunately, the 16 plus has been put aside for the next 3 or 4 years. That would have been a vital reform, in my opinion, but I think we need to go further than that. Do we really need the elaborate examination system that we have at 16? I don't think every other European country has it.
But, I mean, your problem starts arising there with the sort of excessive mobility of people these days. I mean, it is true that local employers would, if we had the system that Paul is talking of, would certainly make their own judgments of the kind of assessments that we were giving. It's not the place of a school to be exploring various methods of examining, or indeed various aspects of curriculum. I think this kind of research needs to be done in other places, and when there is something that's reasonably conclusive, yes, certainly, let schools, have their head then. But no, let us not play around with children's futures. They have one chance.
But how should schools prepare their pupils to take that chance?
I think school is certainly for the education of a young person. That is, educating a person in the sciences, the social sciences, philosophies, the arts, and all other subjects which are relevant to life. But I also feel that school ought to be preparing people to lead a useful role once they have left school. And that means being prepared for a job.
And it's not only people who work in industry who feel this way. At the National Westminster Bank in Wolverhampton, Area Personnel Officer Christopher Tetley.
The job of a school should be twofold. Firstly, it should educate young people so that they can meet their potential later on. And secondly, I think it must prepare them for taking up their role in society and in work.
Surveys seem to show that parents put emphasis on careers. Young people certainly put emphasis on careers. I, as a teacher, and I think most teachers, would put emphasis on self-development, the rounded development of the individual, seen as a complete personality on his thinking, his feeling, and his doing and his making. And these last aspects, the feeling and the doing and making, have tended to be neglected in the British educational system up until now. I think for the future more emphasis must be put there. But for me, every time it's back to the individual and rounded, balanced, well-development.
I think there's a difference between preparation for work and training for a job. And as a teacher, I totally reject the latter. I don't think we're in business to train for jobs. And I think in general terms, for preparation for work, the sort of things outlined previously in terms of our curriculum are, in general, the sort of things that we should be doing to prepare pupils in a general educational sense and make them fit for work.
Right, now, fourth years this afternoon, what we're going to discuss is how the personality that you have got can affect the career that you choose.
From the third year onwards, all pupils at Codsall High School take some form of careers guidance class. This is the fourth year, and the subject of their lesson, self-assessment.
Thought too. Right, Colin, can you think of any type of job you'd be totally unsuitable for if you were a shy person?
Something like an actor or a teacher.
That's right, yes. It would be no use considering going into acting or into teaching if you're shy and you're afraid of meeting people, would it? Andrew, if you have a look at number 11 on your chart, can you think of anything that you could do which would be suitable for you if you're the kind of person who doesn't easily get upset over things?
Maybe a nurse.
Yes, something like nursing, where you've got to be quite prepared to see maybe unpleasant sides of people involved in accidents, and your job depends on you not getting upset over it. So that just gives you a few examples now of the kind of job you could choose and how your personality fits into it.
Some schools pay an intense interest in careers guidance. Others, and this must be the majority, in my opinion, they have a careers teacher who has the job of guiding students, possibly up to 1,800 in some of the schools in this district. And apart from that, he's got to teach his own subject as well. So not only is he supposed to guide people into a career, but also he's got the job of teaching a subject. And that, in my opinion, is just not good enough.
Bill Nichols complains that schools don't provide adequate careers guidance, and it's true that over the country as a whole, very few teachers have first-hand knowledge of industry. But on the other hand, perhaps industry is to blame as well.
I feel that industry in the past has really just sat there and waited for people to approach it. And we really haven't gone out and sold ourselves to schools or to school teachers.
But lack of advice about industry and lack of preparation for the world of work are not the only complaints employers have of schools. Present-day industrialists complain of falling standards.
When you get a lad who has obtained a CSE pass and who, after 6 months at a local college of further education, because all our apprentices go to further education courses, when you get the college ringing you up and saying, can you please help this lad out with his maths, and when you investigate, you find that he cannot multiply or divide, it can only just add up or subtract, then of course you begin to know that the standards within education are falling, got to be falling.
Bill Nichols can quote other examples. So are standards falling? Again, Christopher Tetley, the personnel manager at the National Westminster Bank.
In this area we're seeing some very good young people, both with CSE, O-level and A-level qualifications. As far as I'm concerned, the standard has improved over the last couple of years, particularly since 1974.
No agreement has been reached on how national standards should be assessed. However, we asked Dr. Halsey of Nuffield College, Oxford, whether he thought the educational standards of school leavers had fallen.
No. In a very simple sense, exactly the opposite is the case. More people pass more examinations of every kind each year than they did the year before. So that in that sense, it is simply not true. But there is a truth behind it, if it's differently put, and that is that some employers in some trades, in some parts of the country, find that they cannot get the people they're really looking for. And what that means is that as we've moved towards a society that asks for more skill among school leavers and college leavers, it's bound to turn out that there's a patchy response. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not.
Industry is not thought to be a very good thing or a good environment by people who are involved in the educational system, in the educational world. Maybe they think that the civil service or the professions are, from some point of view, better. There's always been a prejudice in favour of not doing things with your hands, of book learning as being something which leads someone of a lower social status to a higher social status. And that militates against people being encouraged towards industry.
But are the brighter school leavers going into industry?
Certainly in the period since the Second War, over the last generation, the best opportunities have not been in industry. They've been in what the economists call the tertiary sector, in the service industries, in the professions, the sub-professions, and not directly in manufacturing industry. That's certainly been the case, and that's partly why some industrialists have to complain.
What changes would Sir Arnold Weinstock like to see?
I think it would have to go back to the system of providing training for teachers. If there are things wrong in the schools, I think one has to say that the teachers are responsible for it. I don't see who else could be, apart from the parents, in the attitudes they encourage children to take at school and to their work at school. And if it is true that the schools are not turning out educational products of the required standard or comparable with what is achieved in other countries, it follows that the way in which teachers are trained and the standards by which teachers qualify for their jobs need some investigation.
Are schools doing their job properly?
I think one has to say that they are not doing their job as well as it might be done, or as well as would be justified by the very considerable funds which the state allocates to education.
Schools are in the business of creating the next generation. The next generation, any generation, doesn't only work. Of course it works in order to live, but it also lives in all sorts of other ways than at work. It's just as important to be a good husband or a good mother or a good neighbour or a good participant in the political system or what have you, in the church, chapel, clubs and societies, as it is to be a good worker. Though, of course, when you've said that, you've also got to say that you can't be these things very well anyway unless there's a good economy, and that essentially means having a good manufacturing industry.
So should brighter pupils be persuaded to go into industry rather than going into other jobs or going in for higher or further education? Should the state plan for industry's needs by taking more control over what's taught and laying down a curriculum that is common to all schools? Perhaps the exam system should be changed so that fewer subjects are on offer. Or is the answer simply that it is up to industry itself to attract the recruits it needs?
Children are very interested in things which are relevant to industry if they are presented to them in the right way. And whatever the schools may have failed to do in that connection, and I think their failings are quite considerable, industry has itself not done enough to project an image which is interesting and constructive, will arouse interest in children.
Next week, Could Do Better asks, should parents have the right to choose a school for their children?